There's this statistic that says first impressions happen in 50 milliseconds. That's so quick. Your branding must immediately communicate your trust and your professionalism, right? What is your business about? What is your brand about? Are you communicating that through your messaging, through your visuals, or when you watch my video, are you getting what I say I am giving? You know what I mean? Because one of the things about branding as an entrepreneur, you could be thinking you're doing all the right things, but until you talk to your audience, until you talk to your clients, you realize sometimes you're really missing the mark. So the first impression is made in milliseconds, and so everything that you put out should be like on brand, right? Sometimes you'll miss a mark here and there, but it's always like being very intentional about that. The other thing is that a strong brand is recognizable and credible. No, when we talk about being recognizable, is it the way you speak? Is it the way you look? What is going to make you recognizable? Oftentimes we tie this to visuals, and so in one of my videos, I talked about how inconsistent visuals really affect you as a brand. When you're inconsistent, when you're not using the correct colors or the colors for your brand or the fonts, or if your messaging is all over the place, that doesn't give your audience room for them to recognize if you're talking to them. Sure, they might say the brand name, but they are just so confused. And one of the things you really don't want to do is to confuse your audience. So a strong brand makes you one recognizable, credible, but also helps you to be profitable, because when you're recognizable, the more people see you, the more they can trust you, the more everything aligns and is on brand, they're more likely to buy from you, to spend with you, to work with you, that kind of thing. I've given this example before. Before someone oftentimes hire a service provider, whether they're a graphic designer, website designer, whoever they are oftentimes following you wherever you are. They're following you on Instagram, YouTube. They've signed up for your newsletter. They're following you on your website. They're probably even asking people about you. So building a strong brand isn't just showing up one way on Instagram and then you're showing up another way in on website. But another thing, and this just came to me, you don't want to show up one way online and then you're showing up another way in person. And so that's why it's always important for you to be on brand and be authentic to yourself. So we're talking about being on brand, but we're talking about also being authentic to yourself. So when you're building a brand, especially if you're the face of your brand, you want to ensure that how you're showing up online also connects with how you're showing up in person. This is a very big one. Also, you want to ask this question, and I always say doing an audit of your brand is very important. Every few months, you do an audit. So, if you're just starting out in January, in June, you check, is everything on brand? Is everything working? What is missing? What is the missing link? These things help you to realize if, boy, I'm doing, I'm making all the intentional, consistent efforts in building this brand, or is there a disconnect? And this is great, especially before you're at roll out a campaign. This is great after a campaign. This is great when you roll out a service. And that's why it's always important to talk to your audience. If you're on Instagram stories, every now and then you run some polls, you run some surveys, you talk to persons, you like send them messages, hey, I'd love to talk to you just to learn more about you and get your insight on things, right? Think about some of your favorite brands. Every now and then you get surveys, you purchase I'm going to give you a perfect example. I purchased like skincare products, and after I made that purchase, I would get a notification or an email. Hey, how was your recent experience with us? Those things help you to realize if your service is working and if your brand is connecting. Those questions can be crafted in your very own way. All right. So we're talking about why branding matters to your business. Also, I want to talk to you about a recent experience or just a conversation I had with a client. So before this client hired me, I remember the conversation, and this was just me getting to know her, her needs, that kind of thing. And in having that conversation with her, it's like, I'm curious, why did you decide to go ahead with me as a service provider? And the one thing she said to me, she was like, Carey, you are consistent. And I was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, you are consistent. And I'm not talking about consistent in the way of frequency. You're consistent in where you show up, about the things you talk about. So you're not hyped about a particular topic one day and then you stop talking about it tomorrow. You are consistent in terms of what you care about, the things that you want to help persons with. So those are the things persons look for. They look for consistency. And those things also help to build a strong brand. No, we want to talk about some fundamental things in terms of when we talk about impressions, the colors, the fonts, the messaging. One of the things I realize as entrepreneurs, sometimes we focus a lot on looking good, like the prettiness of things. But what we oftentimes miss is how we communicate. And this is a big thing. So naturally, I am a creative visual designer. I talk a lot about brand strategy and I talk a lot about Canva. In more recent months, I've been talking a lot about branding because as a designer, I would create these Canva templates. I would design these graphics for my clients, but I do find that they were struggling with maintaining consistency with the graphics. And so I had this very deep yearning to help my entrepreneurs to understand that while the visuals look good, we have to focus on being consistent. So it's not just about using the right colors and the fonts, but it's how you use it. And then the more I started focusing on branding, I realized, listen, we have to talk about messaging. So while my core focus isn't on messaging, it's a part of branding that we should not ignore. So when we talk about colors, we have to look at when you're choosing the colors for your brand. Sure, I'm going to give you this example. I love purple, right? And one of the mistakes I was making in the early stage of my business was just using a lot of purple, just three different shades of purple. And it was good, but I also realized it was overwhelming. No, purple had and still have a significance in my business, but the overuse of it was not connecting with my audience. And so while it looked good for me and while I liked it, I also had to check what is the psychology behind using these colors, what emotion do I want it to evoke. And so I recently went through a rebranding strategy, or I came up with a strategy, rebranded, got some new nice fresh photos, started working more on my messaging, change up my visuals, change up, you have seen it, right? And one of the things I identified is that as part of the rebranding was to focus a lot not only on the colors that I liked, but the colors that would evoke a certain emotion and connect with my audience from a psychological standpoint. So I use the color purple, but I'm not using like, a purple that wouldn't resonate. I'm choosing the deep plum, I'm choosing the lavender, and how I utilize them and even how I use them on graphics was just so important, right? So, one of the things you'll realize with some of your favorite brands, some of them use red. What does red normally mean? Excitement, power, authority. Some of them that use blue, what do they represent? Friendliness, approachability, and those are normally seen in financial institutions or customer facing institutions. The color yellow, attention, optimism, growth. You see me have on this color green. Green is just brightness and growth, but this shade of green is more about some, like happiness and joy. So if I came in this color shirt and I was just on here crying, there is a disconnect, right? This color also matches well for springtime. So, I was very intentional about wearing this color shirt, right? So those are things that can take you should bear in mind in terms of colors. So when you're creating even your videos, you can also think about which color am I going to wear that would resonate and evoke a type of emotion and not really play on the psychology, but connects with the psychology of your audience where they are, right? It's springtime, I'm creating this video, I'm outdoors, you realize. So there's a lot of things that goes into play here. My audience doesn't only want content with, me sitting behind my desk. They like diversity, they like, flexibility and freedom. Those things are important to them. And so for me, I have to be very mindful as well as how I create that content. But also it is what would I say? It's natural for me to want to be outdoors. And so, just switching up the environment are some things I've bared into mind. So this have nothing to do with colors, but I'm just making a connection between colors and everything else, right? Hope you got that. So my question to you is now, are your colors aligned with your brand personality? when you are using or choosing the colors, are they aligned, right? So if you are using green, is green um is green the ideal color to use for your brand? Is it the ideal color that will resonate with your audience? Is it even for your industry, right? You have to be thinking about those things and being very intentional about it. I have a worksheet called Branding Your Business Worksheet, and with this worksheet, I help you to go back to the foundational parts of your business and brand and to really ask yourself these questions. Because when you ask yourself these foundational questions, like who's my ideal audience, who's my target audience, what do they like, what are their pain points, what are their challenges, it makes branding so much easier for you, and you are more likely to be on brand versus being all over the place and confusing your audience. Got it?